Welcome to Fool's Key Tarot. I'm Ben, and this is a daily reading for Friday, June 20th, 2025. Let's see what the cards have in store for us. I'm going to draw three cards, one for the past, one for the present, and one for the future. First, let's draw the past. We have the Page of Cups in reverse. Next, for the present, we have the Nine of Cups upright. And then for the future, we have the Eight of Pentacles in reversed. So, let's begin with the past and see if we can find the through line and the trajectory and decode what the cards are trying to tell us for today. So the Page of Cups reversed can indicate confusion, in particular caused by a coincidence or some random detail that you read too much into, or it reminded you of something, but that was an erroneous reference. Like a red herring would be a perfect example of the Page of Cups reversed. So in the past, you may have been distracted by something that turned out to not be important or worth your time. But in the moment, you somehow became convinced that it was worth paying attention to that detail or pursuing that option. And it either became clear later that it wasn't what it seemed like, and therefore you needed to give it up, or that it was never a good idea to pursue at all, and it was only either immaturity or a lack of thinking through the situation that is why you were pursuing it in the first place. So, related to today's reading, because anything that shows up in the past, it could have been recently, it could have been a very long time in the past, but whatever it is coming up today. That's why it's showing up in today's reading. So it will be relevant to today somehow. So it may have been very recent past, it may have been a very long time ago. We can't say for sure, but it sounds like there's something bubbling up today that relates to a time where you paid a lot of attention to something that either turned out to be useless or coincidental or just not worth paying attention to. And that could either be because you were tricked in the moment and it actually seemed promising and just turned out not to be, or you should have known to ignore it and it was a lack of foresight or clarity that caused you to go down this route that was not fruitful. So we have another cup card in the present, and this one is upright, and it has to do with satisfaction and having enough to share with other people. This is often a card of a restaurant or a hotel or the host of a party. You can see the cups arranged on the table behind the person. Perhaps they're having guests over and they're going to share what's in those cups with other people. So that definitely suggests a resolution to this red herring or confusion from the past. And because they're both cups, I think that you corrected course and you found the right version of whatever confused you in the past. So if there was a red herring before, you now in the present not just realized that that red herring was not worth pursuing, but then you identified the real clue. You figured out what was really going on. So maybe because this card is showing up in the present, it may be that this was an unresolved issue up until the present. So if you had gotten confused by a detail or paid too much attention to some aspect of a situation that wasn't actually relevant, maybe you learned before today that you needed to stop paying attention to those things, or that you were barking up the wrong tree, but you hadn't yet figured out what the right tree was. And maybe today or sometime near the present is when you locked into the correct details to pay attention to. And with the Nine of Cups, there's definitely a sense of sharing that revelation with other people. So maybe now that you've found the right things to pay attention to, you could either tell others about what you found, or if that led to some kind of reward, then you can share that reward with others. So let's look to the future to try to get a better picture of the overall trajectory. So the Eight of Pentacles in reverse could suggest a lack of progress or effort, or maybe a stalled project. And while the Nine of Cups has to do with satisfaction and achievement, there is a sense of coming up a little bit short or having a missing piece. Not that that missing piece causes you to be miserable or feel like a failure. You might feel like there isn't a missing piece, but you will only realize that when the missing piece is found. And you'll say, oh, I thought everything was fine before, but I was mistaken. So to the extent that the Nine of Cups doesn't feel fully satisfying or finalized, it probably won't feel like that in the present. You probably aren't aware of what you're missing, or what you're missing feels very small and unimportant, and it might actually be relatively small. This isn't necessarily an absolutely crucial aspect or detail, but it is something that will make you emotionally more well-rounded and will allow you to connect more fully with the other people who are represented in this card. Because I said that you might be sharing your progress with others, but the Nine of Cups is a 9 card, and 9s are a little bit about isolation and being alone. And so with this card, there's always a sense of being alone in a crowded room. Yes, there are other people. You might be the host and have lots of friends and family around you, but there might be an invisible barrier between you and them. First of all, as the host, that sets you apart a little bit from everyone else. And this doesn't mean necessarily that you are having a party and you are the host of the party. This could be meant in a lot of ways, both literal and metaphorical. But there's definitely a sense of being with others and yet also being somewhat separate. And I think this reverse Eight of Pentacles in the future is showing a lack of progress towards that final completion. You're almost there with the Nine of Cups, and you may have fallen into convincing yourself that you are there. Because the situation in the present is pretty good, you may have settled for pretty good and not be pushing towards that last piece or towards the next level of accomplishment or satisfaction. And with the reversed Page of Cups in the past, I think that we can see the reason for this is because you spent time in confusion or paying attention to the wrong things. You probably feel relieved and happy to have found your current status with respect to that confusion from the past. And so that is likely why you either feel like it's good enough, even if you're aware that there's some little bit that could be improved or that's missing, or you're completely unaware that there is a missing piece or that there could be some kind of improvement. You feel like you've done everything that there is to do, and yet there is one final missing element. And I think the cards are warning you that on your current trajectory, you're not making progress towards that final piece. And that's okay in the sense that I don't think your present circumstances are bad enough that you need this last piece urgently, but the longer that you stay in your current position and don't even make progress towards that last piece, the harder it will be to get there, and the more you might become convinced that your current situation is good enough. So I think the cards are telling you to reach a little bit higher or farther. You've stalled out on your progress, and that is because you feel pretty good about where you're at. Now, that doesn't mean your life overall. There might be other parts of your life where you don't feel very good about where you're at. But usually, these readings resonate with a certain aspect of your life and don't always apply to your entire life overall. So this could be your romantic life, it could be your friends, it could be your career, it could be a group of people that you interact with for a different reason. It could be your family, whether they are nearby or perhaps they don't live near you and you don't see them very often, but there's still an ongoing relationship or dynamic that you are managing or thinking about. And whatever area of your life is most on your mind today is likely going to be what this has to do with. And so To whatever extent you do feel like you've achieved something and are somewhat satisfied, the cards are telling you there's more that you could do that you're not currently making progress towards. And if you're aware that there's a lot missing, maybe you don't feel that satisfied with your current position, but definitely it's something that used to be worse. You used to not have as much clarity, and now your situation has improved, and you've stopped improving it, or at least you've stopped making very fast progress. I think from the past to the present, I can see quite a lot of progress, but going from the present to the future, there's much less. So it might be that you're still making progress, but are just slowed down. It could also be that even if you're putting in a lot of effort, it might not be the right effort. And therefore, you could be just banging your head against a wall, putting in time and energy, but not actually getting anywhere. So if you do feel like you are trying to move forward still, maybe you do still feel dissatisfied, even if you know that you've come a long ways, well, then I would reassess if your efforts are actually getting you where you want, or if maybe those efforts are misplaced. And if you've grown complacent in your current situation, then the cards are nudging you to reach higher because you have more potential than you've currently realized. It's fine to enjoy what you currently have. You don't have to feel dissatisfied. This isn't about deciding that the good things that you have in life aren't good enough and you have to chase more. But just because things are already decent doesn't mean they can't be better, and doesn't mean that you should give up on trying to make them better. So the cards are telling you that you have more potential, but that whatever your current trajectory is not either not headed towards unlocking that potential, or is doing so more slowly than you could otherwise be doing. So I would either redirect some of that effort or reignite your desire to improve, because you have improved in this life area. And even if your actual situation hasn't changed much, I think because these are both cups cards, I think an equally likely scenario, and it might be a combination of the two, but it might be that your situation has actually stayed the same, but your perspective has shifted. Perhaps you had a group of friends or some family members or just other associates, either at work or as part of a hobby or in any area of your life. And maybe you felt like those relationships weren't satisfying or good enough. And maybe they shifted, maybe those relationships changed, but maybe it was just your perspective that changed. And you realized, actually, these people are pretty great. Actually, I should be pretty happy with what I have. And that's going back to the idea of paying attention to the wrong things. So in the past, there's some area of your life where you were paying attention to the wrong things, and it caused you to be confused or dissatisfied. And now you know better about what truly matters, and so you feel better about the situation, but there is something still missing. And whatever your current efforts are to finally get that missing piece and elevate to the next level, and I think this is something that stands to help everybody involved here, not just you. Because with the Nine of Cups, there's a sense of sharing what you have. And with both Cups cards, I think that these are probably about relationships. So this affects more people than you. So improving the situation isn't about being selfish and just trying to make your own life better. It's going to benefit everybody involved. And that's why it's important to reach higher, even if you already feel pretty good about where you are. Maybe you don't feel pretty good about where you are. That's okay too. Whatever you're trying to do, if anything, could be adjusted to be made more effective. And the cards are telling you that you have that potential. You just have to put the work in, and that work has to be the right kind of work in the right direction. And with both of these cards being cups and then a pentacles in the future, I think the cards are indicating that there's something tangible that is what is required to make this situation even better. If the past and the present have had more to do with relationships and your perspective and your feelings about the situation, maybe what's missing now is something that is more tangible, either a location that you could relate to these people at, a different place to meet or spend time together, or maybe money could be spent on the situation and that would make people more comfortable or get along better. Maybe there is an object that would help people get along better. It could be something as simple as a game, like a physical game object that people could come together and play. And maybe that would make the group even more satisfied with each other and get along even better. So if in the past you focused more on emotions and relationships, I think the missing piece is something a little bit more tangible. An object, a place, something of value, of tangible value, property, not just a matter of perspective. If you've only shifted your perspective to get from the past where things were more confusing and less satisfying to the present where things are better, then I think definitely you need to think about the different aspects of the situation or the relationship, because the mental and the emotional parts are highly important, but they're not the only things that matter. So the missing piece is probably something that you can touch or feel or taste, something real and specific, not mental, like a perspective or an attitude. I think that's the part you probably already have locked in. Maybe that part could still improve. I'm not saying that that element of the situation is perfect, but it might require this tangible thing in order to improve that more mental or emotional aspect. So look to something specific and real and tangible as the missing piece that is required to continue to improve the situation, because it's come a long ways, but that doesn't mean that you're done, and it doesn't mean it couldn't get even better. But I think there is a little bit of a warning in the cards today that your current trajectory is going to lead to being stuck and stagnant. And I think what the cards are trying to tell us today is about how to avoid that fate, or just to spend less time in that mode of not making progress. So if you enjoyed this reading, then subscribe to see more. And if you'd like to learn about tarot cards or try some of my online guided readings, then head on over to foolskey.com where you can check that out. Thanks for watching, and see you tomorrow.